One may say that, is it true? Can they actually anticipate some kind of support come May 8th, especially given the fact that this particular Socialist Party was launched just a month ago?
Well, they think that they certainly can, and that's because of the roots that NUMSA has in the communities across South Africa. Of course, NUMSA, the country's biggest trade union with more than 320,000 members, largely being the catalyst that led to this Workers' Party. It's the culmination of 5 years of planning since the expulsion or since NUMSA's decision to dump the ANC and its subsequent expulsion from COSATU. But today, on the last day of the conference, we're finding that it's one of the most tense days. That's because the election of new leadership is happening. It's something that was supposed to be announced this morning. The delegates have already nominated their preferred leaders and submitted it to the Electoral Commission, but that process was delayed after a number of objections from the provinces. And this is because of either because of the makeup of the nominations list or because of contestations between the leadership. And just before this crossing, we were asked to leave the venue, and the media was told to leave because Ivan Jim, the convener of the Socialist Revolutionary Workers Party, wanted to speak to the delegates in a closed session. That closed session will of course be followed by the address by the Electoral Commission. But for more on exactly what Ivan Jim wanted to say to the delegates, we're joined now by the spokesperson, acting spokesperson for the SRWP, Vuyelwe Tutoli. Thank you so much for joining us. So why was the media asked to leave, and why was it necessary for Ivan Jim to address the delegates in private?
No, it is very important because you have to understand that the process of the different, for instance, comrades are allowed to have the caucuses to discuss those issues. But when it comes to the process of the actual, before the announcement of elections, it is indeed a private session where, for instance, we can give the media the announcements thereafter. But in terms of the robust discussion that needs to take place, the members, for instance, inside, they must feel confident that it is indeed in their private space. So that's hence, for instance, Comrade Ivan Jim, before he gave that input, we made that indication to request the members of the media in good spirit to kindly excuse us, and then after the announcement have been done, the media will be welcome back to find out who is elected into the leadership.
And before we left, there was the NUMSA Second Deputy President Basil Cele just saying that there was a meeting held between the National Core and the Electoral Commission during the lunch adjournment, and it was about the nomination of leadership. What are you able to tell us about that meeting and why it was necessary?
No, I think it was necessary, for instance, just to because at times, if the discussion between provinces, you have to understand that we are here for 3 days. So we cannot necessarily extend beyond, we can't have a 5-day or anything like that. It was the meeting just to assist one another to find common ground as to, for instance, what is causing the delays. I was not necessarily myself inside those meetings, but the National Core leadership met and tried to, for instance, to converge any kind of views that exist so that smoothly we can reach this process of announcing leadership.
One question that stands out here is that the Independent Electoral Commission has already received the names of representatives to Parliament of the prospective parties in the election. And you are now holding a conference where you are electing your national leadership for the first time. What do you do when one of your top leaders is not on the IEC list that has to go to Parliament? And does this put pressure on the delegates to elect a leadership that mirrors that IEC list?
There is a process of IEC and the deadline, and there's a process of the SRWP which we have now. So, for instance, for that process of the IEC electoral process, we had a widespread consultative process engagement with the provinces to submit their names. So either, whatever the outcome in terms of either the Central Committee or any other structure, won't have a bearing on the names that will have to proceed in terms of the numbers that we'll get when it comes to going to Parliament, because we already have a widespread consultative process, and provinces will have submitted names to the national structure.
Thank you so much. That's Vuyelwe Tutoli, the acting spokesperson for the Socialist Revolutionary Workers Party. Well, as you can see behind me, they're in the closed session. That's because they're going through the nominations, and when they call us back again, they'll have a new leadership which will be announced for the first time.
Well, it's definitely a story that we'll be keeping an eye on there, Govan. So thanks a lot for giving us some insight in terms of exactly what can be anticipated ahead of the Socialist Revolutionary Workers Party. It is officially launched. And, of course, as we hear that media has been asked to be removed so that its convener, Ivan Jim, can actually have that conversation in a closed session with some of those members.